So, long story short, on Christmas Eve, 1975, at 9:15 p.m., he was staying with his girlfriend at a place called the Glen Forsa Hotel on the Isle of Mull. And at 9:15 on Christmas Eve, he took off in this rented Cessna F-150 airplane because the hotel just handily happened to have an airstrip right in front of it, which is really cool. Yeah.
That's not something you typically would find.
Yeah, I know. They put it in 1966, apparently. They wanted to have easier ways for people to get onto the island, and they also wanted to have a way to airlift people out if they were sick and they needed to get to the mainland.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of brilliant.
So that's why they put it in. So anyway, he took off at 9:15 and headed off over the Sound of Mull, which is a big body of water to the north of the island. And, of course, he vanished.
What?
Yeah, he vanished. Now, before you guys fling your iPods to the ground and yelling, not another friggin' missing person story, I have to say, this particular mystery has got a pretty strange little twist in it, so bear with us for a little bit. Would you guys agree that this mystery's got a kind of a twist?
Oh, yeah.
A serious twist. Yeah. Okay, first, our cast of characters. We've already met Peter Gibbs. His girlfriend's name was Felicity Granger. Tim Howitt is the co-owner of the Glen Forsa Hotel. David Howitt is his brother, also owned the hotel. He also went by the name of Scott McAdam, but more on that later. And then Pauline Howitt, I'm not sure. She's mentioned in a news story, but nobody says exactly who she's married to or if she's a sister or what. We won't worry about that. It doesn't really matter.
Oh, I think Pauline might be one of the people who dealt with the airfield in some capacity. Because I remember reading the news article that I think you're referencing, and I believe that she stayed in the house that was next to it, and so she witnessed some of this.
Certainly, but the relationship is unknown, right?
Oh, that's
just that she has the same
yeah.
last name, so...
Yeah, hard to say.
I've seen it wife, sister, I don't know. I don't care. Yeah. Oh, and just a quick fun aside. You guys remember Netafornario?
Yeah.
Yeah. The island that she died on, Iona, is right next to Mull. Yeah, Mull is the island. If you want to get to Iona by road, then you have to take the ferry to Mull, drive across Mull, and then take another ferry to get to Iona.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Weird.
Interesting.
Yeah, so yeah.
You've got to think for these islands.
I know. They're kind of cool. I'd like to go out there and do a little research as soon as we start making some actual money on this. Yeah. Okay, back to our story here, though. Peter Gibbs and Felicity Granger had flown to Mull for a holiday over Christmas time, and they were staying at the Glen Forsa Hotel, of course, which has an airstrip next to it, as I just mentioned.
Sure.
So that night, Christmas Eve, they had dinner together, Gibbs and Felicity Granger. Having split a bottle of wine, he then announced that to Tim Howitt, the owner, that he was going to go do a little flying. And Howitt asked him if that was a wise idea, but Gibbs said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it, whether you like it or not." And so, I mean, for one thing, it was dark, cold, and you've had a half a bottle of wine.
And there was a storm moving in.
Yeah, there was a storm coming in, too. So Felicity went along with him, but she just wasn't going to actually fly. She just needed to get out there with a couple of flashlights and go down to one end of the runway and lay the flashlights out so that he could see where he was going. Because it's a primitive airstrip. It's just grass, and it doesn't have like landing lights or anything like that. So typically, if they want to do a landing or anything like that at night, what they'll usually do is bring in some cars and park cars around the airstrip so people can see it that way.
This is high tech.
Headlights on, yeah, I know.
Yeah, also I just like, what kind of guy is like, it's Christmas Eve, I'm here with my sweetie, we're like in this hotel, we just had a romantic dinner, I'm gonna go flying, bye.
I know.
Bye!
Yeah, I know. But he did it, and maybe he was just bored, He just wanted to go out and do something fun.
I guess.
Yeah, he was a little bit of a daredevil. I was reading some thing that was written by one of his co-musicians that he was in the symphony orchestra with, and one amusing little story is that they were going to go to a performance. They were both performing in the symphony, and they were the traffic was just totally backed up and not moving, but it turns out the oncoming lanes were pretty clear, and so this guy says to Gibbs, he says, "What are we going to do? We're going to be late." And Gibbs says, No, we're not. Move over. I'm driving. And so he puts the car in gear and just goes into the oncoming lane, just buzzes on over the symphony. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
So he kind of was a thrill seeker.
Well, he also had a bit of a temper too.
Yeah.
He seemed a bit of a hothead, because I remember reading the story about him in the symphony, and evidently they had some conductor who was a total jerk, and he finally stood up to the guy, and because of that he ended up getting fired. But he was the only one who just said, "That's it, I'm saying something." I just can't take it anymore.
And he was in the right, but apparently that's just the culture, is that you never talk that way to the conductor, even though the conductor deserved it. And it was actually kind of funny. I mean, it's so upper crust. The rules are so subtle, because the conductor's infraction was, at the end of her performance, he didn't wait for the applause. He just turned and walked off the stage, and that's considered a major insult to the audience, to the musicians, and so that's what the whole dust up was about. Anyway, but we're way off base here. Let's get back here. David Howlett heard the plane being started. He went out and got his binoculars, and he was watching the Cessna, and he was a little bit worried about this being nighttime and all, and
a half bottle of wine.
Yeah, and he handed the binoculars over to Pauline Howlett. She was watching them set up the flashlights, and she said that she was sure that both flashlights were moving at the same time. Now, Felicity went to do the flashlights. He was in the airplane, because she could hear the plane revving. The plane engine was revving, so somebody was in there controlling the plane. So if Gibbs was in the plane, how was she, because the airstrip is about, 40, 50 feet wide maybe? So how was she managing to move both of these flashlights at the same time? So
they were placed on opposite ends. It wasn't like one person with what do they use in airports now, where they're
making
the
red
air
cones
motion,
up and down.
their lights to direct the traffic. It wasn't moving like that. It was at the end. It was placed at the end.
I think placed on the corners,
so that he knew where the end of the runway was, so that he knew he had to be airborne by that point.
Yeah, and he could
aim
between the two lights. But obviously, they'd be 40, 50 feet apart. So probably it was a little odd. She was under the impression that perhaps there was more than one person, more than two people down there. And Tim Howlett saw the same thing. He was in apparently the hotel has an observation lounge.
Of course it does.
Of course it does. It's like a little airport, so of course it does.
He's in the tower,
and
basically.
And he also said that both lights were moving at the same time. But when asked, Felicity Granger later said no, it was just her. There was nobody else out there.
And it wouldn't have been on a hill or anything. They wouldn't have been rolling.
No, it's flat.
Because it's a airstrip.
So, it's a grass airstrip. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a puzzler, but we'll talk about that a little bit later here, if we talk about it at all. Anyway, so he slammed it into gear and took off and flew out over the Sound of Mull. And David Howlett was a little bit worried, so there's a place just down the road, and you can see this on the aerial photo if you want to do Google Earth or whatever. It's to the east by 500-600 feet down the road, or a quarter mile down the road, I don't know. But Pennygown Cemetery is right on the Sound, and it's got a good panoramic view. So he drove down there with a radio, so he could just sort of see if the plane came back or not, and then listen for distress calls and things like that, because he was, like I said, worried. And, of course, not long after he arrived there, a nice big sleet storm rolled in, which lasted for 72 hours. So, bad luck.
Nothing's worse than a sleet storm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not snow. It's not rain. It's icy.
Yeah, and you got to wonder what that's going to do to your plane. It's going to ice up your windshield. It's going to ice up your flaps and your wings. That's bad news.
Yeah, that's terrible news when you're in the air.
Really bad news. They waited, but Gibbs did not come back. And so next day, on Christmas Day, 1975, they called the authorities in, and there was a big land and sea search. They used RAF and Navy helicopters and a police mountain rescue unit, lots and lots of volunteers, people who knew the area pretty well. And they went over the island and searched it, looking for wreckage, and didn't find any plane wreck. That's where the story ended for the time being, but then 4 months later, April 21st, 1976, a local shepherd found his body up on the hillside above Pennygown Cemetery. Yeah, up on the hillside, about 400 feet up.
I feel like this is why we have our rule about 5 years, right? Because like people email us and say, "Oh, this person disappeared," and it's like, "Well, it's only been 2 months. What do you?"
Yeah, his body will turn up. Don't worry. Yeah.
Oh no.
That's the worst, when
Yeah.
the corpse turns up the day after we put the show in the air.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah. But anyway, folks, I promised you there'd be a weird twist, and this is it. So they found his body, but no plane wreck.
Yeah.
They found his body. The only pre-death injury on his body, and I say pre-death because there had been some scavengers and birds kind of, pecking at him and stuff like that. So he had some injuries, but the only pre-death injury they could find was a 3-inch laceration on his left shin. Now, if he had fallen out of the plane or jumped out of the plane or whatever,
He would have had broken bones.
he would have had broken bones, massive
Yeah.
contusions. So he didn't have any of that, no injuries to speak of. So the pathologist concluded that exposure was the cause of death.
Oh.
Yeah, and they also examined his clothes and his boots and his hair and everything for any traces of salt water or marine life, any little bugs that got, and there was none. There was none of that stuff. It's a real puzzler. So, I
guess the question would be like, is that something that would wash away if there was a lot of rain or sleep?
I would think that the hair and the clothes even possibly it would wash away, but not the boots. He was wearing flying boots,
like the insides. Of
they would definitely. Yeah, they would.
It gets stuck in there. Yeah, moisture's wicking through the material.
Right, but that it would be salt water versus whatever water was washing over it over the course of the four and a half months that he was missing. Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's pretty unlikely.
Sure.
But in October of the same year, 1976, a local farmer found a tire from the Cessna washed up about 2 miles northwest of the hotel.
Huh.
Yeah, and apparently they had the serial number either painted on or written on or something like that.
I would imagine it'd be cast into the tire. I mean, think about your tires that you buy for your car. There's all those numbers that are right along the inside of the rim. I imagine that's got to be some kind of serial number.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
I don't know. But yeah, so anyway, but they were able to match it to the Cessna. So that's the only for years. In September 1986, so that's like 11 years.
10 years later,
yeah. 11 years after, a diver found the wreckage of a small plane in the Sound of Mull. And 2 locations are cited in the stories that I read. One says that it was found off the coast of Oban, the town of Oban, about a mile offshore, which puts it, 10 miles away maybe, to the southeast from the hotel. But another one says that it's about a mile east-northeast from the hotel out in the Sound. So that's a pretty huge variation there.
Yeah.
So the diver reported that the wings had been torn off the plane, but the doors were still latched and shut.
Were they? Wait, let me clarify that because I've read some things and I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
They were latched shut, not locked.
Yeah, they were latched. I don't even know if you can lock plane
I've seen something
doors.
about locked, and so that's why I was curious because I did some digging about the plane and I never saw anything that said that the doors locked like that.
I would assume you could lock them from the outside at least. I don't know why you would need them to be locked from the inside. When you're flying, they're as long as they're latched, but you would kind of want to be able to lock it up when you walk away from it when it's on the ground, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, if he crashed and then swam out of the plane,
It wouldn't be latched.
no, you wouldn't turn around. I mean,
Right. Even if
got
he fell
better
out
things
of
to do.
yeah, you're going.
Yeah, well, if he jumped out at speed, if he managed to
It
force the
might
door
have
open,
launched. Yeah, but
it would
then he
have
would have.
slapped it shut again.
But then he would have had broken bones.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
I know.
Wait, sorry, we're theorizing.
I know,
right?
I know.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've seen no documentation. I've tried to find some. You would think that he would write down the call numbers or whatever they are on
The
the side
diver?
of the fuselage. The diver. If you think he would have done that, but I don't see that he did. He basically said he found a plane, and everybody thinks that it's in this Gibbs plane, but nobody knows exactly for sure. Why he didn't mark it with a buoy, I don't know.
Oh, so he doesn't remember either where it is.
I mean, I'm sure you could go back and search and find it somehow. I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably ways to find it. They probably should try to figure this out. It would be. They're never really going to solve the mystery until they find that airplane, and even then they probably won't. But there might be a clue in there. So anyway, years go by, and again, a lot of people are assuming, but nobody knows for sure that that's his plane. But in early 2004, 3 Royal Navy minesweepers were off doing stuff off the coast of Oban again, and they found the wreckage of a plane about a mile off of Oban. So that sort of supports the diver's location as being a mile off of Oban, unless it's a different wreck. There's no reason it couldn't be a different wreck.
Yeah, I was going to say, it could be any plane.
Yeah, that set off speculation in the papers that they thought this might be Gibbs's plane that the RAF had found. They said they sent a submersible with cameras down there and stuff like that to get pictures of it. And they analyzed it, investigated, and they figured out that the wreckage they found was a Catalina flying boat. You familiar with those things, those amphibious planes? Yeah, they're kind of big, and they've got the bottom of the hull is shaped almost like a boat, and then they've got overhead wings.
It's a seaplane.
It's a seaplane.
It's a
Yeah,
seaplane.
yeah,
Okay,
it's a seaplane.
okay.
Except for without the pontoons, right?
Yeah, I don't.
It doesn't have the.
think,
Those
I
are
don't
what they're called.
think it has pontoons.
Right. Because
would
like a
imagine
normal
it had some.
seaplane would have like the pontoons instead of like wheels, and they just like take off and land that way. These are more like boat planes.
No,
Yeah.
they still have small pontoons.
Right, but
on
it's
the
not
wings.
the same.
Yeah, it's not like, when you
It's
see
not
a Cessna
legs off of the
outfitted
bottom, yeah.
to be a seaplane.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably nice to have some pontoony sort of floaty thing out there just in case a wave catches you on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they'd be on the wings, not on like legs below the plane.
Not where the
Yeah,
running
no.
gear is supposed to
Yeah.
be.
No. Yeah.
Running gear. Thank you. Planes.
Not your forte.
No.
So this wreck was a disappointment,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the location is still a mystery, and who knows? Maybe the plane didn't even crash. I mean,
It's
hard to say.
possible. Yeah.
Maybe he just, but I'm not going to theorize about this yet. We'll talk about that later. There have been two books are written about this. The Great Mole Air Mystery by Scott McAdam, whose name actually is David Howitt, the co-owner of the hotel.
Right.
So he was ghostwriting?
Yeah, he was
No, it's
writing
a
under a
pseudonym.
Using a
pseudonym.
pen name, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he was afraid that if the book came out and it turned out to be really lame, then everybody would make fun of him, so he used a pen name. And the other book is a fictionalized account of the whole thing called These Demented Lands by Alan Warner, who lives in Oban.
I remember seeing the cover of that, at least the cover of the one that I saw. It had a really cool cover.
All right. You ready to swing into the theories?
Nope.
She means yes.
Okay. All right. Good enough. So I've got several theories here. One is that the plane crashed into the Sound of Mull, and he managed to escape and swim to shore. And once he was on shore, he could have, from where he was at, he could have walked to the road, made a right turn, and walked down the road a little ways to the hotel. It wasn't that far.
This is based on if he crashed a mile out to sea from the airfield, not if he crashed near Oban, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's conceivable even that, I don't know how well a Cessna 150 flies without a pilot in it. I don't know how far it would have gone. It's conceivable that he didn't crash a mile out. Maybe he bailed closer to shore. The plane went out and crashed further out.
I could see that, yeah.
But the plane crashed. He manages to escape somehow. And apparently the windshield was broken, so he maybe swam out through that. Because since the doors were locked, I can't imagine he'd swim out from a sinking plane and turn around and shut the door.
No, but couldn't the water pressure have shut the door? I mean, it's possible. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the plane wasn't even maybe discovered until 10 years later, right?
Yeah, maybe some fish shut.
So it's always but it's always possible,
currents, yeah.
that the currents are.
Yeah.
Or when it tumbles to the bottom and the wings are snapping off. Because the wings were snapped off in the one that was found. Like I said, the wings were broke off, correct?
Yeah, I said they were both broken off.
So I could see conceivably if the plane goes down and it tumbles across the surface of the water and the door is not latched, it's probably going to get slammed shut.
Yeah.
And even if it came down gently, I could see as it sinks and it hits the bottom, if it happens to land right. I mean, this is circumstantial, and God knows if we're even on the right track here.
Yeah.
Well,
But
we don't even know for
it's
sure that this is
possible.
actually Gibbs's plane.
Right, yeah, but it is possible that a open door can be shut.
So he swims to shore. Once he's on shore, he apparently maybe had hypothermia. In fact, he probably did.
Oh, yeah.
After a nice long swim through that icy cold water.
Yeah.
So he gets to the shore and gets confused because all he needs to do is walk up to the road, make a right turn, like I said, go down to the hotel, and he's home free. Instead, he wanders up the hillside and then just probably got overcome with hypothermia and died of exposure. That's one possibility. The reasons not to like this is that, again, the no salt water that we mentioned.
Yeah,
as well as
though
his boots.
potentially it could have been washed off, but probably not.
Probably not. And then the other reason I don't like it is he was wearing his clothes in his boots. Because have you guys ever tried swimming with clothes on in the water?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
terrible.
not easy. Yeah, especially shoes.
Shoes are the worst.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that's the first thing you do is you cut your
Kick
clothes
that
off,
off,
take
yeah.
your clothes off, whatever you do. You've got to. They weigh so much and they put so much drag on you.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason I don't like this idea that he crashed and got out of the plane.